Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse. And this is Reverend Don's Vlog. And tonight our question comes to us from Michael of Jedite's Pagan Vlog. And the question is about my feelings on raising children in pagan religions and what should be taken into account when doing so. And my feeling, first, of course, is that this is an individual decision and there are many things that influence it. And um, it's not the easiest path for a child in a culture where their religion is not the dominant religion, but that's true for any child from any non-dominant religion. And there are lessons to be learned in that as well. But some of the things you need to consider if you're going to raise your child in pagan religion um, really have to do with the influences that will be around that child. And you also have to consider this if you're not going to raise your child in what I would assume would be your religion. I was raised as Correllian. I um, became a first degree Correllian priest at 13, which is very young, but not necessarily within the context of being raised in a tradition. And I have an idea of what that life is like and what does have to be considered. One of the things you have to consider, um, which wasn't really an issue for me, but might be for you, is the behavior of other family members. Are both parents or all parents who are involved all of the same religious point of view, or are there several? Um, if your spouse is not pagan, are they supportive? Um, are your family members supportive? What kind of area do you live in? All of these are things you need to think about in terms of making the decision of whether you will or will not raise your children in the pagan faiths. Uh, if you want my opinion of whether you should, I think absolutely. Um, a lot of people in the pagan movement really don't want to raise their children um, in a way that, quote, forces their views upon them, end quote. My attitude is that that's not what you are doing um, when you're raising a child necessarily. Now, I do know that for those people, it's usually how they felt about their own parents. But you have to consider the religion that those parents came from. In my experience, when you are raising a child in certainly the kind of pagan faith that I come from, you're going to expose them to all kinds of different ideas, and ultimately you will let them make their own decision. But if you're not raising them with the religion, then you're not going to be exposing them to your ideas. And they will be exposed to everyone else's. I think that if your pagan faith is an important part of your life, of course you should share it with your children. You should teach them about energy. You should teach them about spirit. You should teach them about reincarnation. Some of the earliest memories I have to do with metaphysical teachings from my parents. My parents had different points of view in metaphysics, and to some extent I got both of these, although my mother's was dominant, but that's okay. When a child gets different religious points of view, what it tells them is that people can have different points of view, and that's very important. I also certainly was taught that ours was not the dominant point of view, and one of the things that can be difficult is that depending on where you live and what the influences are, it may not really be possible for your child to share their spiritual ideas that they're learning from you with other people without negative reactions. That can be a hard thing to live with. But as I say, it's not necessarily any harder than for any other child from a minority religion. And if you don't raise them to know what your beliefs are, there are plenty of other people who are going to share their beliefs with them, and you may not like those beliefs. Um, for a lot of people in the pagan movement, they, by no means all, I don't know that I'd even say most, but a lot, came from a certain kind of Christian background that very much forced ideas upon them and upon everyone else. in a very intolerant manner. And that's what they're hoping to avoid. And you should avoid that. That's not how you should share spirituality with a child at all. But teaching your child what you believe, letting them know that they can, in the fullness of time, decide what they believe for themselves, but this is what you believe. That's not forcing your views on them. That's sharing your views with them. A very different thing. And that's what I recommend. And yes, I think you should involve them in ceremonies. And yes, if you have ancestor altars, you should bring them to the ancestors. And yes, you should share mythology and magic and meditation with them. I think all of these things are great for children. And I think that you do them a disservice if you don't. You also potentially do yourself a major disservice, because if you don't give your child some spiritual grounding, often they will end up choosing no path, or they may find themselves in a path that is the very one that you're wanting them to avoid. The narrow, intolerant kind of path that will turn them against you, because you did not let them know what you believed in the first place. I knew a particular lady. She came to Correllianism later in life. But her child was still a child at the time, but she didn't want to force anything on him, which ultimately meant she didn't share anything with him. And he ended up not understanding her spirituality at all, not understanding her at all when he became an adult, because it was so alien to what he actually had experienced and what had been shared with him. So I think it's very important that we share what we believe, what we stand for with our children. And I don't think that's forcing it on them at all. And I think if you don't give your children some kind of spiritual background, that you're doing them a disservice. Now, as I say, when I came to adolescence, I was allowed to make my own decision of what path I was going to go in, and I could have changed it a dozen times if I'd chosen to. I ended up choosing my mother's path, and I've been on it all this time since, and very happy with it. But I believe that had I made a different decision, she would have been fine with that. But had she never shared her views with me, I would not have had the option of choosing her path. And I have to say, if you think your child is going to suddenly discover spirituality at 30, that's probably not going to happen. It might. But I think that you really need to share your views when they are young and open to ideas. And let them know other people think differently. There's nothing wrong with their knowing that. Just as there's nothing wrong with their sharing what you believe. And when they get older, they're actually going to make their own choice anyway, whether you intend for them to or not. People come to the pagan movement for many reasons. The one I've heard most is because in the spiritual background of their family where they started, either it was very intolerant, or they had questions that the spiritual authorities could not answer and reacted with hostility toward the child asking the questions. So I think it's very important to answer children's questions, to share your beliefs with them, and I think to raise them in your faith with the understanding that it may not be where they choose to remain. But I can't imagine not having been taught about mythology and deities and ghosts and reincarnation and the soul, and how much different my life would have been without that. I think you do your child a disservice if you don't share your views. So these are basically my thoughts on the matter from a personal level. But I would also say that from the level of being a movement, the children are the future. And if we don't raise our children with at least the possibility of carrying on our faith, then our faith won't be carried on. And I think that we need to keep that in mind as well. To be a healthy movement, we really need people of all ages. And children, I don't think, I think as long as children understand, as adults also should understand, that there are many different views, then I think that sharing your views with them is very much the right thing to do. And I have seen a lot of people who chose not to, who were not really happy with the outcome, or um, were very surprised by the outcome. So I've also known people who raised their children in the faith, and the children eventually wandered away from it, as many will. Because the thing is, we're all individual. We all will make our own choices. And the fact that you do or do not share your spiritual beliefs with your children does not change the fact they will eventually pick their own. Um, a lot of people who are pagan would not be pagan if that were not true. So my attitude is that yes, we absolutely should. Now it's now 8:40 Eastern. At 9 p.m. Eastern, I do my chat room. Hopefully we will perhaps talk a bit more about this subject there. And if you've never come to Chancellor's Chat, it's every Monday at 8. Been going on since 1998, which is a very long time to do a chat room. Started out on about.com, and now it's a video chat, which is a very wonderful evolution. I find the video chat to be the most engaging form of the chat room that we have done. The worst one was the 3D chat at least a decade ago that gave everyone vertigo. But the video is the best so far. Of course, it's probably soon enough going to become a VR chat as technology continues forward, but we'll deal with that when we get there. So feel free to stop by chat. We don't have set topics. We talk about whatever we choose to talk about. It's a get-together of friends. And if you like the vlog, please consider hitting like, subscribe, or share according to the platform you're seeing it on. And feel free to give me more questions in the comments. I have a few more I'll be doing in the upcoming days. And the order for third degree books is going out, and they should be in relatively soon. I'll be making further announcements about that. Medium 365 should be going out soon as well. And then Ritual and Theory and Practice. So it's a busy time. And thank you very much for being part of this time and part of my life. And thank you for watching the vlog. I hope you enjoy it. And until next time, may you blessed be.